Hey guys, welcome back to Walking with Jesus Daily. This is the recording for day 326. Day 266 straight in the Bible. If you have been following along, that means that maybe for the first time ever in your life, you've done a deep, in-depth study of Jesus for 266 days. And even if you've just listened, and even if you've missed half of this, and even if you're behind, it doesn't really matter what the situation is, just look at how different your year would have gone or could have been had you chosen not to do this, or had you chosen to fill up with 266 days of the world, or whatever it might be. I know there's many of you that come to mind, and I hate calling people out because I always forget people, but you know who you are. And if you're listening to this recording and it's 5 years old, that doesn't mean that you haven't been prayed for. Prayer works retroactively, proactively. It works in the moment. It works beyond the moment. There's no limitation on time to God. He loves it when we pray. So we pray prayers on others' behalf, and that's kind of a big deal. It's kind of what we're supposed to pray: a prayer of thankfulness and a prayer of hope for other people. And if God ever chooses to use this in a way other than how it's being used, then praise God. And if not, and if I need to be silenced, if I'm stepping outside of what God has for me to do, then I hope that He shuts it down, and I hope that nobody ever hears a single word that I ever speak. I don't do this necessarily as a chore, and I also don't do it because I really hope people tell me that I'm smart or that I'm dumb. Try to do this before an audience of one and let that be. I get excited when I get to do it with other people. My family is with me today, although they will not chime in until after the recording is over to tell me information, which doesn't help me on the previous recording. I still love having them with me. I still love talking about Jesus with them, regardless of how much they do or do not like hearing me talk about Jesus. So, not that they have anything against Jesus, just me. So, here we go. We're going to continue on in John 21, 15 through 25. We will read it in the three versions. We will look into the insight to all of this. Hopefully you remember from yesterday, Thanksgiving, what had taken place. Breakfast with Jesus. And the third appearance that Jesus made. And it's kind of neat because 3 days they were without Him, and He appears to them 3 times. And you kind of wonder where they were in each one of these moments, right? They had all that time of darkness. See, they were still in the tomb when Jesus appeared. They were still in that point of sorrow and grief and confusion and pain and maybe anger. I've given up 3 years of my life, and for what, right? It's really hard telling how people felt or what the disciples felt. But we're human, and we know that Satan wished to sift them like wheat, and he did. So I can imagine these may have been the worst 3 days that the disciples have ever faced. Now think about your life, and think about maybe the worst couple days that you've ever faced, and then think about something that happens that's unbelievable. Something happens that doesn't make any sense. Something happens that seems or feels almost miraculous. And that's what's happening in this place. Jesus is appearing, and He's basically telling them, hey, I told you this was going to happen. Why didn't you listen to me? Why didn't you have faith? He appears again. He says, Thomas, over here, buddy. Check out these nail scars. Aren't these awesome chick stick scars, right? And of course Jesus didn't say that, but we know how we're talking about men who were men of the world, men who were fishermen, men who were tax collectors, men who were warriors. So they're familiar with the ways of the world, very much so, and very new to the way that Jesus does things in this new, incredible way. But Jesus yet still appears to them and shows them in human form. He eats. He shows them, hey, it's me. It's me. I'm not a spirit. I'm not a ghost. I'm not just Yes, I can do supernatural things like appear out of nowhere and walk through walls. So what? The point being is I'm still Jesus. I'm still Jesus. And I'm alive. I had to take care of some business. But now I'm back. And then they go fishing. And they catch nothing. And Jesus waits for them. He's waiting for them to collect. My wife had told me after the last recording that at that time it was believed that there were only 153 species or kinds of fish. And of course they drag 153 up there. And it doesn't say that they were all different, but wouldn't it be cool if they were? If like one of every fish just went and jumped into that net. That's what you pictured? Kelly just spoke. That happened. I don't know if you can hear it on the recording. We'll have Riker boost it. But she just spoke. So that would be cool. That's the way we picture it. One of every kind of fish jumping into that net. And the disciples are so pumped to see Jesus, and now they are having breakfast with him. Picking up in verse 15. When they had finished breakfast, and that is fish and bread, Jesus said to Simon Peter, and this literally could be a multiple day lesson, and we're not going to do that. But just listen. Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these? He said to him, Yes, Lord, you know that I love you. He said to him, Feed my lambs. He said to him a second time, Simon, son of John, do you love me? He said to him, Yes, Lord, you know that I love you. He said to him, Tend my sheep. He said to him the third time, Simon, son of John, do you love me? Peter was grieved because he said to him the third time, Do you love me? And he said to him, Lord, you know everything. You know that I love you. Jesus said to him, Feed my sheep. Truly, truly, I say to you, when you were young, you used to dress yourself and walk wherever you wanted. But when you are old, you will stretch out your hands, and another will dress you and carry you where you do not want to go. And we'll talk more about this. It does say in verse 19, this he said to show by what kind of death he was to glorify God. Isn't that weird that Peter is going to glorify God in a certain kind of death? How does God look at this life, and do we look at it the same way that he does? Do we look at pain and suffering as glorifying God, or do we look at pain and suffering as, why, God? Why are you allowing this to happen to me? Don't you want me to feel good? Don't you want me to be happy and joyful? It says, after saying this, he said to Peter these incredible words. He said, Follow me. So what does he ask Simon? Well, he asks if he loves him. And he calls him Simon, son of John. Simon, son of John. Simon, son of John. It does not call him Peter. Not in the ESV. And he says to him, Feed my lambs. Tend my sheep. Feed my sheep. All right. Verse 20. Peter turned and saw the disciple whom Jesus loved following them, the one who also had leaned back against him during the supper and had said, Lord, who is it that is going to betray you? And that was, what was that? 13:25. It says, when Peter saw him, he said to Jesus, Lord, what about this man? You've given me instruction. You've told me what's going to happen. But what about this guy? And I love Jesus' response. If it is my will that he remain until I come, what is that to you? And then mine has an exclamation point at the end. He says, you follow me. Do not worry about my plans for other people. you have enough to worry about following me. In a way, he's forgiving Peter for denying him 3 times by allowing him to admit that he loves him 3 times. But he gives him something to do. Feed my lambs, tend my sheep, feed my sheep. And the last thing he tells him to do is follow me. And Peter asks about John. He says, what is it to you? What is it to you if he remains until I come? That's none of your business, in other words. You need to follow me. So the saying spread abroad among the brothers that this disciple was not to die. Yet Jesus did not say to him that he was not to die. But if it is my will that he remain until I come, what is that to you? And this is a fantastic way to look at everything. Verse 24, this is the disciple who is bearing witness about these things, and who has written these things, and we know that his testimony is true. So we know that the disciple that Jesus loved is John. He's telling us right here. We're pretty sure that it's John, the son of Zebedee, the brother of James, because that would make sense, right? It says, now there were also many other things that Jesus did. Were every one of them to be written, I suppose that the world itself could not contain the books that would be written. John's ending is goosebump worthy because he makes some things incredibly clear, and then John is basically telling us, I'm telling you a very short version of the story of Jesus. I'm giving you a very small amount of insight into what he did and how he did it. We're talking literally about thousands and thousands of miracles and teachings. The Gospels that we have, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, they are not the complete and entire work of Jesus. They are a blink. They are a drop in the bucket. Praise God that we have any at all. But do think about it from this incredible standpoint that God has given us these things. And he said in the last chapter, it's so that we believe. Right? Remember reading in the last chapter, verse 30, it says, now Jesus did many other signs in the presence of the disciples, which are not written in this book, but these are written so that you may believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and that by believing you may have life in his name. Do you see how big and powerful that is? It's big and powerful because it's Jesus. You don't have to know everything. You don't have to know anything. You just have to believe. Believing in Jesus requires next to zero knowledge or wisdom. Faith requires next to zero knowledge or wisdom. Let's check this out in the Passion. Let's see what information we can dig up through the Aramaic. Again, I read through different versions because, one, I enjoy it. Two, there is no translation. Like, there's no word for word because it doesn't make any sense. We have words that they don't have. They have words that we don't have. We have to take the context. We have to take the entire writing and translate it over. And there are versions that are translated from the Aramaic that they spoke, maybe then to Greek, then to Latin, then to English. There are some that skip the Latin and go Aramaic, Greek, English, and then there are others that go Aramaic, English. There's no reason not to read from all of them. There's no reason not to reason. No reason not to reason. Okay. In your mind and in your heart, and pray about what's actually taking place here. So, in the Passion, it reads like this. After they had breakfast, Jesus said to Peter, Simon, son of Jonah, do you burn with love for me more than these? Peter answered emphatically here, yes, Lord. You know that I have great affection for you. Take care of my lambs, Jesus said. Now there is a whole paragraph of stuff here. I'm going to read it to you, and we're taking it for what it is. Jesus called Peter Simon, son of Jonah. Jonah was the prophet who ran from his calling, but was supernaturally restored. So Peter had kind of followed Jonah's example here by denying Jesus, running away, yet Jesus is standing right in front of him to restore him and to heal his heart. And over the course of these couple of verses, the Aramaic word for love is, let me say this right, huba. I think I might start using that. Huba, you, Kelly? Nothing. And is taken from a root word that means to set on fire. Wow. This was the word Jesus would have used to ask Peter, do you burn with love for me? Our love for Jesus must be passionate and kindle a holy flame inside of our hearts. That's a whole different way to look at love. To burn with love for Jesus. Huba. Remember to huba your family today. And huba your spouse. But wow, more than anything, huba Jesus. I want a t-shirt that says huba. Remind me to ask John. Huba shirt's coming live. As often as is the case, Jesus' words have more than one meaning. When he says, do you burn with love for me more than these? He could be referring to the fish or the things of this world, right? Because they did just catch them. Or the fisherman, because he loved to fish. He most likely is referring to the other disciples, one of which his brother, his best friends, people he's come to know very well. It was Peter's boast that he loved Jesus more than the others, right? So put this together. It says, do you love me more than these? And then if you do, he tells Peter then to go love the others. If you love me more than them, then I'm asking you to go love the others. And he also said, remember Peter's words, even if everybody else leaves you, I never will. And obviously this boast of Peter's was wrecked by Satan, and Jesus knew it was going to happen. Peter denied him 3 times. We know the story. So Jesus asked Peter 3 times if he loved him, basically bringing healing to Peter, removing this pain of the denial. And isn't it interesting that Peter ramps up a little bit each time, just like he ramped up a little bit each time he was asked if he knew Jesus? No, I don't know him. No, angrily, I don't know him. No, cursing, I don't know him. Rooster crow, Jesus eyes, shame. In this instance, it's 3 times, and Peter escalates each time. You know everything. You know that I love you, right? He brought healing to Peter, and he removed the pain of denial. All that was raging inside of Peter, all that pain, was quieted in this. So the Aramaic in verse 15 here for feed my rams, male lambs, may refer to the other disciples. The Aramaic is simply sheep. Jesus used the 3rd term, ewes, female lambs. Some see this as Peter was symbolically given charge of 3 flocks, Jews, Samaritans, and Gentiles. Regardless, after all the fish being caught, I think the point was being made, what was supposed to be happening. And Peter needed to lead the church and all people, all nations, to him. All right, verse 16. We made it a whole verse already. Jesus repeated his question the second time. Simon, son of Jonah, do you burn with love for me? Peter answered, yes, my Lord! Exclamation point. You know that I have great affection for you! Exclamation point. Then take care of my sheep, Jesus said. Then Jesus asked him again, Peter. Now, in the first two it says Simon. This is interesting in the Passion. The third one it says, Peter, son of Jonah, do you have great affection for me? Peter was saddened by being asked the third time. And he said, my Lord, you know everything. You know that I burn with love for you. Jesus replied, then feed my lambs. 3 denials, 3 opportunities for redemption. Peter, listen. This is verse 18. When you were younger, you made your own choices, and you went out where you pleased. But one day, when you are old, others will tie you up and escort you where you would not choose to go, and you will spread out your arms. Jesus said this to Peter as a prophecy of what kind of death he would die for the glory of God. And he said to Peter, Peter, follow me. Now in verse 18, basically he's saying you girded yourself. And I love the word gird now since Kenny preached on it. To gird up your loins in 1 Peter. I love to say gird morning, any way that I can throw in the word G-I-R-D. But anyway, the Aramaic is gray-headed when he's old. Stretching out his arms is clearly a hint of what's coming. And what's coming is what Peter would experience in Rome one day, where the historians have recorded that Peter was crucified upside down at his own request. He said that he was unworthy to be crucified in the same way as the Lord. He was once willing to die for the Lord. So Jesus made sure that would happen. Peter, follow me. Verse 20. Then Peter turned and saw that the disciple whom Jesus loved was following them. This was the disciple who sat close to Jesus at the Last Supper and asked him, Lord, who is the one that will betray you? So when Peter saw him, he asked Jesus. And remember, at the Lord's Supper, Jesus didn't say this out loud to all of them. He spoke to John about who that one was. So when Peter saw him, when he saw John, after being told what was going to happen to him, he asked Jesus, well, what's going to happen to him? Basically, what about him? Shouldn't he feed the sheep? Shouldn't he tend the lambs? Shouldn't he, how's he going to die? I'm so sorry that I cough into this. I can't help it. Jesus replied, if I decide to let him live until I return, what concern is that of yours? You must still keep on following me. What if he's never challenged? What if he never suffers? What if you're the only one that suffers everywhere you go? Should that make any difference whatsoever as to my instructions to you? No. Verse 23, it says, so the rumor started to circulate among the believers that this disciple wasn't going to die. But Jesus never said that. He only said, if I let him live until I return, what concern is that of yours? Finishing up in verse 24. I, John, am that disciple who has written these things to testify of the truth. And we know that I've documented accurately. We know that what I've said, what I've written, is real and has happened because I've seen it. It says the evidence, both internally and externally, clearly points to John as the author of this book. Thus, the explicit reference here. The word "we" implies that John had confirmed with the other disciples, as he has left us an accurate account of the life of Jesus. Can you imagine writing the most incredible thing you've ever written about the most incredible person you've ever known? He finishes in verse 25. Again, one of my favorite verses. Maybe John's my favorite book. I don't know. It depends on what I'm reading next. Jesus did countless things that I haven't included here. And if every one of his works were written down and described one by one, I suppose that the world itself wouldn't have enough room to contain the books that would have to be written. The Aramaic is very poetic, it says. The world itself would be emptied out into the books that would be written. An alternate translation of the Aramaic could read, I suppose that forever is still not enough time for all the books to be written. That's kind of amazing. Like, imagine that every encounter that Jesus had with every person, and then every one of those persons writes an account of the life of Jesus. So the thousands and thousands of people that he met, and the thousands of people that he probably appeared to, and the people that were healed, and then the people later. I don't know. It's an endless story, right? Like, how is Jesus right now affecting your life? And what does your book look like? Would the books of Jesus and the things that he does in the lives of so many, how he saves so many, wouldn't those books be never ending? Wouldn't the miracles that he does in your life just be never ending? It's a really cool conclusion. All right, we'll finish up with Amplified. I don't know who has the better ending. Is it Matthew or is it John? I don't know. Okay. Finishing up in the Amplified, finishing up the book of John, starting in verse 15. So when they had finished breakfast, Jesus said to Simon Peter, Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these? This says, do you love me more than these others do? With total commitment and devotion. That's an interesting way to read it. He said to him, yes, Lord, you know that I love you with a deep personal affection as for a close friend. Jesus said to him, feed my lambs. Now, Peter uses a different Greek word for love than Jesus does. Peter uses phileo, Jesus uses agapo, but it could all be hubo. Is it hubo? In his first two questions to Peter. And he said to him a second time, Simon, son of John, do you love me with total commitment and devotion? He said to him, yes, Lord, you know that I love you with a deep personal affection as for a close friend. Jesus said to him, shepherd my sheep. He said to him the third time, Simon, son of John, do you love me with a deep personal affection for me as for a close friend? Now he switches it up. Peter was grieved that he asked him the third time, do you really love me with a deep and personal affection as for a close friend? And he said to him, Lord, you know everything. You know that I love you with a deep personal affection as for a close friend. Jesus said to him, feed my sheep. Jesus uses the same word that Peter does in the Greek here as we have it written on the third time. The first two times, he asks him about total commitment and devotion. Then he asks him as a friend. That's a pretty cool way to read it. Isn't this how we start? Do you love Jesus? And are you committed to living a life with him? Are you committed to be devoted to him? And we say yes, but then he says, but do you have a relationship with me? Do you love me like a relationship with a person? Personal affection deep personal affection like with a close friend. This is neat how you tie these things in. Yes, I'm committed to you. I'm devoted to you, Lord. The second time, yes, I'm committed to you, Jesus. I'm devoted to you. I've decided to follow you. But the third time is like, yes, I love you like a dear, close, personal friend. To love someone like that is far more than just being devoted to them or standing up for their name. It's someone you walk through things with. It's someone that you suffer with and you triumph with. This is a very different kind of love, and I love thinking about it in that way. It's pretty cool. I also love Huba, so I'm going to do both. 18, I assure you, Jesus says to Peter, and most solemnly say to you, when you were younger, you dressed yourself and walked wherever you wished. But when you grow old, you will stretch out your hands and arms, and someone else will dress you and carry you where you do not wish to go. Now he said this to indicate the kind of death by which Peter would glorify God. And my question is he glorifying God here because he said out loud, even if everyone else leaves you, I will never leave you. I will die for you. No one will touch you. I will die for you. Do we have to be careful with the things that we say? It says, and after saying this, he said to him, follow me. In other words, walk the same path of life that I have walked. Peter ministered nearly 30 years after the resurrection of Jesus. He was eventually martyred by the Emperor Nero. It says in about 67 AD. So this is before the temple was destroyed. The Roman historian Eusebius, that's definitely wrong, said that Peter was crucified upside down at his own request. Isn't it cool that people outside of those who walk with Jesus made recordings of Jesus? Verse 20. Peter turned and saw the disciple whom Jesus loved following them, the one who also had leaned back on his chest at the supper and said, Lord, who is it that is going to betray you? John the apostle. John's mom's Salome, I don't know, were sisters. So John would have been Jesus' cousin. That's kind of cool, right? Also, weird transition. Like, you know, when you're growing up and you haven't seen your cousins for a while and then you see them and then like completely change because they've hit puberty or something. This is like a different kind of thing. Like, this is like seeing Jesus be like, oh yeah, there's my cousin. And then Jesus is like, pull in the billion fish. And like, oh man, what's happening? And then, oh, my cousin can do miracles. Oh, my cousin teaches. Oh, my cousin is the Son of God. So when Peter saw him, when he saw John, he asked him, Lord, what about this man? Now that you've told me my future, what is his future? And our belief is that John was the only apostle to die of natural causes. They say he lived to be 94 and died around 100 AD. He got to witness some incredibly terrible things, and his punishment, because it seems like he was kind of like a Cohen, if you will. He just loved to be touching Jesus, near Jesus, resting on Jesus. It seemed like the greatest punishment for someone like that would be to isolate them. And he was put on the island of Patmos. That's where he wrote the book of Revelation that we believe. And maybe the most terrible punishment for him would be without people. But he always had Jesus, obviously. So Jesus says to Peter, if I want him to stay alive until I come again, what is that to you? You follow me. And in every one of these, it's an exclamation point. In every one of these, it's a, why are you already worrying about other people and other things? Like Peter, you have got to stay focused. Isn't that what some of us hear sometimes? I hear that. I tell that to myself. You have got to stay focused. Do not worry about the lives of other people. Do not worry about how God is working in the lives of other people. You have got to stay focused on following him, or you will lose your way. So this word went out among the brothers that this disciple John was not going to die. And as far as all those disciples were concerned, they all died before him. So who knows, right? Yet Jesus did not say to him that he was not going to die, but only if I want him to stay alive until I come again. What is that to you? This is the same disciple who is testifying to these things and has recorded them, and we know without any doubt that this testimony is true. What I'm writing to you is accurate and true. It's up to you if you want to believe it, but why would I write it if it wasn't true? Like, what kind of mythical story would I make up? Do I look like the kind of guy that's going to sit down and write a fictional book for people to read? I'm a fisherman. Who knows how well I can read and write? Who knows how well I do things like this, right? In verse 25, and there are also many other things which Jesus did, which if they were recorded, one by one, I suppose that even the world itself could not contain the books that would be written. What a cool book to have, this book of John. What an incredible way to read it in spirit and in truth. In every way and in everything, it's always up to us if we choose to believe or if we don't want to believe. God has given us that option. He's given us the opportunity to choose if we want to believe or if we don't want to believe. But why not? If you're on the fence right now, why not? You believe history books. You believe stories that are told about great things that have happened or terrible things that have happened. More along the lines now in the news, all we read about is the terrible things that are taking place in the world. And we believe them. Our flesh actually loves them. I don't know why, but we do. So if this can stay alive for 2,000 years or more, if these writings can stay alive, and we can have actual writings that took place in that time and they match up word for word or as close as possible, right? Why would we not believe? Hopefully you've gotten to the point by now where you understand how to read the Bible better. You understand that Jesus is and was real. That there's enough evidence to know that without a doubt and without question. Isn't it cool to have these writings? Isn't it exciting to read about the things? Isn't it exciting to go day by day and say, I cannot wait to see what he does next, who he's going to talk to next. I was not expecting that. Did Jesus really say that? And the truth of the matter is yes. All of it is yes. So, I love you guys, and I'll see you tomorrow.